If you're joining me from YouTube, just give me a thumbs up so that I know that you can actually see my screen. Okay, I tried it out here and it's working. All right, so yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Um, Hi, Junior. How would you use AI to help with sending email? Great. Okay, yeah, so that's exactly what we are going to be focusing on today. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about what n8n is. We've talked about what you can do with n8n. We've gone over the interface and everything. But today, the focus is on building real AI agents live. So by the end of this session, hopefully you should be able to build your first AI agent. It can be like an email agent, but the goal of this session is that by the end of this session, you should have been able to at least build your first AI email agent. Okay, so let's get started. Just for the purposes of those who have not like joined previous streams, I'm just going to talk a bit about what you see on the screen here, because if this is your first time joining, you're probably thinking, what is this? Like, what is this thing Stephanie is showing here? So today we are talking about n8n. So what you see here is the n8n interface. And then yeah, so this is the n8n interface. When you come into the interface here, you have multiple tabs here, right? So you have like the workflow tab, where you sort of you show all that, basically shows all the workflows you've created inside n8n. And then you have the credentials tab here, which is basically showing you like all the credentials you have inside n8n. And it's good to always have your credentials set up ahead of time, because when you do that, what happens is that you are able to sort of like anytime you're building an automation or you're building an agent inside n8n, you don't have to always have to create credentials from scratch. This is a secure way to store your credentials. And then under the execution tab, you see like all the executions that have gone on within a period of time. And then under the variables tab, you get to see variables you're storing. And then we have like the data tables. So data tables are just like tables in memory, right? And then on top here, you see things like, you see metrics around like your number of automations that have executed in production, the number of failed executions, and you see some other important metrics here. But today, what we are really interested in is creating our first AI agent, which in this case is an email agent. So I'm going to click on create workflow. But before we go into like creating an AI agent and all that, one thing is that usually when people start building, hi Ken Choni, thanks for joining. Yeah, usually when people start building, like when you want to build your first automation, right? You just don't go in and like start building, right? You need to sort of architect the solution you want to build, right? So in this case, we want to build an email agent. But when you think of an email agent can do so many things. When you think of an email agent, you can have an email agent that will basically sort of like prioritize your emails for you. You can have an email agent that can respond to emails for you. You can have an email agent that can unsubscribe from emails you've been receiving that you haven't really viewed in a while. So there are so many use cases just around like building an email agent, right? So the fact that you're building an email agent doesn't mean that like you have to touch on all these use cases. In fact, I always say that when you are starting out with like building AI automations, right? When you're starting out with building AI automations, you don't have to go with like the complex stuff, right? You can just start with like the simple things, right? You can start with the simple things and then you go from there. So today our focus is just on one simple use case. We just want an email agent that is basically going to respond to emails on our behalf, right? Also, if you are joining me on TikTok, you can also join me on YouTube. I'm also live on YouTube as well. So maybe if you're joining me on YouTube, maybe you'll be able to like see the entire thing. If you don't know my YouTube channel, this is my YouTube channel. Basically my YouTube channel is This AI Tool Does That. So if you go into YouTube and you search This AI Tool Does That on YouTube, you should be able to see my YouTube channel, and then you can join live there if joining on TikTok isn't. Yeah, so this is my YouTube channel. This AI Tool Does That, this one here. So I have two YouTube channels. I'm specifically talking about this one. Yeah. So if you're joining me on TikTok and you can't really see the screen properly, just because I'm streaming on YouTube as well, so you can basically join me on YouTube as well. That way you get to see the full screen. Okay, so coming back to building our AI agent. So today the focus is really on just building an email agent, and the use case within the email agent we are trying to focus on really is just building an email agent that would automatically respond to emails that come through to our emails. Right now, if this is your first time building AI automation, then you should know that, like, or any form of automation at all, you should know that every automation should start with a trigger. That's the first step, right? Every automation would have a first step, and the first step is a trigger. So you can decide what that trigger should be in terms of the types of triggers you can have. So you can have the ability to sort of like trigger your automation manually. So you can decide that you are triggering your automation manually. And if you are triggering your automation manually, then it's sort of like means that every day you have to come in here and trigger automations, right? You can also decide to trigger your automation when something happens in an app somewhere. All right. So if you're joining from TikTok, you're enjoying the stream so far, you can give me a heart. And like I mentioned earlier on, you can also join my stream on YouTube as well, if you want to get a clearer view. But every automation basically starts with a trigger, right? So you can trigger it manually, you can trigger it from an app. So specifically for this use case, we are looking at building an email agent. So you want to trigger it from your email, right? You want an email agent to automatically respond to emails that come through your inbox, right? So we are going to use like a Gmail trigger basically, right? And the idea is that when a message is received, we want the automation to get triggered, right? So I'm going to say on message received, right? And so that would be our trigger point. Now, one thing you should notice that up until this point, your Gmail accounts cannot communicate with n8n, right? You need to have a bridge that would get them to talk to each other, right? You need to have a bridge that will get them to talk to each other. So in order to do that, you need API keys, right? So API keys are sort of how you can get your automations to talk to each other, right? So how do you get your API keys? Because I'm using Gmail, every application would have API keys, and usually you can basically access these API keys when you go to like the developer documentation for every application, right? So every application will have API keys. So specifically how you can access your API key for Google is to go to console.cloud.google.com, right? So if you go to console.cloud.google.com, you can get API keys from there. Now, if you are just starting out, you haven't used Google Cloud before, the benefit is that Google Cloud, Google gives you about $300 in free credits. So what this means is that you can sort of like use most of these APIs for free till your credit is up, right? So you come into Google Cloud Console, and then you add in a new project, right? You create a new project. Now I have a number of projects here, so it's not going to allow me, but you create a new project. And once you create a new project, you basically give your project a name, and then you select the billing account for it, and then you can select the organization, and then you click on create. So once you create the project, it's going to be in this drop down list here. And what you can do is you basically select the project you want to create these API keys in, right? So I have this project here already called Make AI Agents. So so that's the one I'm using. Hi Tolu, thanks for joining. If you are just joining in, like I mentioned, you can also join me on YouTube. if you want a landscape view, you can join me on YouTube basically. And then you can sort of like get a landscape view so that it's a more clearer view than like on TikTok. Yeah, and in my YouTube channel is this AI tool does that, so you can join me on YouTube. Okay, so back to creating API keys, right? So inside your Google Cloud Console, what you have to do is you create your project. Once you create your project, you come down to APIs, and then you click on APIs and services. And what you're interested in first is you want to enable the service you want here, right? So in this case, we are going to enable Gmail, right? Because we are trying to build an email agent. So we are going to enable the Gmail API. I already have it enabled, so I don't have to enable it here, but basically this is how you would enable it here. Okay, it's loading up. So let's see. Yeah, so you'd see it here. If you haven't enabled it, you can basically come in here and click on enable, and then it would enable the API for you. And then let's go back here. And then once you have Gmail enabled, you come down to credentials, and what you want to do is you want to create credentials, right? So coming back into our automation here, let's see the type of credentials our Gmail account needs requires in n8n. So if I click on create credential here, you realize that it requires a client ID and a client secret, right? So basically this is OAuth authentication. So when you come into APIs and services here, you're interested in the OAuth client ID. So you click on that, and then basically you fill out the form here. So what type of application do we want? It's a web application. You give it a name, and then in here at authorized redirect URIs, you add a URI, and you get a URI from this side here, right? From your n8n Gmail node. So OAuth redirect URL, this is it. So you just copy it and then you paste it in here, right? And then you click on create. Once you click on create, you'd have access to the client secrets and then the client ID, which you need for your Gmail account, right? Again, if you are just joining, thanks for joining in. I'm also live on YouTube, right? If you want to have like a more landscape view, you can join me on YouTube. And my channel is this AI tool does that. If you are not subscribed, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Yeah, so we have our client ID and our client secret configured here. Also, as I'm doing this, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comment section, both on YouTube and on TikTok, so that we address the questions as we go, right? Because I know that if this is your first time looking at n8n, or you haven't done anything with APIs, this can be a bit confusing, or it can be a bit it can look overwhelming at first. So if you have any questions, you can just drop them in the comment section below, and then I'm gonna try and I'm gonna address them. All right, okay, so that is how we get our credentials configured for Gmail, right? So I have my Gmail account connected now. So if I should just test this out, one good thing about like building, when you are building AI automation or you're building agents in general, right, the best thing for you is to keep testing as you build, right? You shouldn't wait and wait till you build everything before you test, right? So you should be testing as you build. So as you can see, when I tested this out, it's showing me what's in my email right now, right? This is my email, the information that came through from my email. This is it, right? So it's giving me the information from my email. So this shows me that the API is working and everything is connected properly, right? So now that we know that the API and everything set up is working, the next thing we want is we want to add in, remember that we are building an AI agent that will be able to respond to emails on our behalf, right? So now we know that, okay, our API is working. What is the next step, right? So we want to now include AI. I want to bring in AI so that we can sort of we can sort of like respond, right? We can sort of respond to the messages that come through. Yeah. Hi. Thanks for joining on YouTube. And let me see on TikTok. Yes. So again, if you're just
So I
joining,
built a 9 AI agent AI content team using OpenClaw, and this is how it works. You just have.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So if you're joining me on TikTok, again, you can join me on YouTube. This is my channel. This AI tool does that. If you want a more landscape view. All right. So we are at a point where our Gmail trigger is working. We are able to sort of extract the emails coming through. So what happens next after the email comes through, right? What happens next? Now, when the email comes through, we want AI to respond to the email on our behalf, right? So I'm going to click on this plus button and I'm going to select AI. Now, when you select AI, there are a number of like nodes in here that you can choose from, right? So you can choose the AI agent node, or you can choose individual models here, right? So you can choose Anthropic, Google Gemini, God, like you can choose any of these ones. But then I'm going to go for the AI agent node, right? And inside this AI agent node, just think of the AI agent node as the whole brain behind your AI email agent automation, right? So your AI agent node basically can help you draft the email message you want, right? So if I come in here, you can see that there are certain things within this node, right? So it's asking for a prompt user message. Now, if you are familiar with ChatGPT, right? If you're familiar with ChatGPT, like if you've been using ChatGPT, you would know that before you can do anything in ChatGPT, you first need to enter your prompts, right? That's the user message, right? That's the prompt, that's the user message. And if you are familiar with using ChatGPT projects, you need to add instructions, right? You need to add instructions. So it's a similar concept when it comes to like using the AI agent node inside n8n, right? You need to have a prompt user message, right? In this case, we are just going to define it because we don't have like any chat inputs connected. You need to have like a prompt user message. And then you also need to have a system message. So think of the system message as the instructions you would give inside your ChatGPT, right? So let's come in here. Now, your prompt user message would typically just be what you would usually prompt ChatGPT, right? So what you would usually prompt ChatGPT would be your prompt user message. So what would you usually say? Let's say you receive an email, right? Usually what you would say is that maybe you would say something along the lines of can you respond to this email on my behalf, right? So you say, can you respond to this email on my behalf, right? Now, what email are you talking about, right? Usually what you would do is you usually even just like sometimes you just copy the whole email and put that in there, right? So in this case, this is the email we are interested in. We have this email here, right? So we are just going to drag this email here. And then the system message is where you give instructions on how the email response should go, right? The system message is you give response to how the email response should go. So for instance, this is where you have to sort of like define guardrails and your brand voice and all that. Like it really depends on like what your brand voice is, right? So I do have a free resource on my website. So if you go to my website, this AI tool does that, and you go to free resources, right? You will be able to download the AI brand voice builder, right? So this is basically a mini guide and worksheet where you can sort of like go through to define what your brand voice is, right? So you come in here, you enter your name, you enter your email, you download it, you get access to like the template. So it's basically a working guide, and it would help you sort of define what your brand voice is. Once you have that defined, you can now be able to generate that prompt you need for your system message, right? I do already have like a prompt I created here. So I'm just gonna walk you through the thought process behind this. Again, if you are joining me on TikTok and you want like a more landscape view, you can join me on YouTube, because I'm also live on YouTube. So you can join me on YouTube, and basically so that you get like the landscape view as well. My YouTube channel is This AI Tool Does That, right? Okay, so let's come in here and let's talk about what is going to go into the prompt for let's talk about what's going to go into the prompt for our email agent, right? So the first line is basically defining what the primary role of the email agent is. So the primary role here is like your helpful email assistant, right? And I've talked about the fact that like your primary role is to assist me in responding to emails that come into my inbox, and your goal is to ensure timely, professional, and accurate communication on my behalf, right? So this is basically the first part of like defining what the role of the AI agent is, right? Again, if you have any questions, can you make a video in detail for beginners? Yeah, sure. Like next week I can have like a detail video for beginners. I did have like I've had several streams in the past, so maybe you can check my previous stream, the stream I had last week. If you go into my channel, I did like I did an n8n for beginners stream, so you can sort of like you can also watch that. That's quite detailed and like very beginner friendly. I didn't even touch building like automation or anything, so I suggest that after this stream you can also watch that video. Ayush, you can also watch that video so that like it doesn't look overwhelming and so complicated, right? Okay, so let's move on to, let's come back here, right? Let's come back into this prompt we have here. Now, coming to drafting responses, right? You have to define clearly how you want your responses to go. You have to define clearly. So I'm saying things like write clear, concise, and professional draft email replies based on the context of the incoming email. Match the tone and style appropriate for the sender. Address all questions or requests in the email. Maintain a friendly, professional tone at all times. Ensure quick turnaround times for important emails, and always protect confidentiality. Like all these things I've put in like in terms of to define how I want the responses to go. And in here I have some guardrails, right? I'm like, limit the response to just 5 lines and don't tell jokes, right? So these are the things I have defined inside my prompts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this now, right? I'm going to copy this now and I'm going to paste it inside my system message. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to drag in who this message is from. I'm just going to add it to the end. And then I'm going to execute this step. Now, I expected this to fail, right? I expected this to fail because we haven't attached, like we've just built the skeleton, but we haven't actually really attached a brain to it. And the brain is really our actual AI model, which we are using, right? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to add a brain, right? So I'm adding Gemini, and the reason why I'm using Gemini, you can use ChatGPT or any of the models you want, but I'm using Gemini because again, like I mentioned, you're able to get some for free, some API runs and stuff for free, right? So I'm using Gemini and I'm gonna come here again, the same step we did earlier on, APIs and services. And this time around, if we come into Gemini and I click on create new credentials, you realize that you need an API key, right? An API key is what you need. So you need to create an API key. So under credentials this time around, we are going to be selecting API key. Okay. Again, if you have any specific questions, you can drop them in the comment section and I can answer them for you as we go. If you're on TikTok, you can also join me live on YouTube, so that you get a lot more, like you get a landscape view and everything. All right. Okay. So let's come in here. And so you need to create an API key this time around. So I'm going to click on API key here. And then you give your API key and name. You select if you want to put any restrictions on the application. You select what kind of restrictions you want to put on the application, and if there are any API restrictions, you can also select the restrictions. Best practice is to always have restrictions on your API keys or on your credentials. Okay, that's like best practice. And then you click on create. Once you click on create, you get an API key. Always keep your API keys safe because other people can have access to it, right? I already do have an API key that I created before like starting this session. So I'm going to come in here. I've already connected my API key. So this time around, if I should run this now, it should generate an output. It should generate a response to the email. So if I come in here, you can see that it has generated a response to the email. So it's like, thanks for sharing the latest in AI developments. These insights are always valuable, right? So it's just responded to the email without me having to manually do this. Now, next week, we are going to even improve this AI agent. Next week, during the live session next week, we are going to improve this AI agent. We are going to be adding some more functionality to this AI agent so that it doesn't just respond, but then it does other things like formatting and everything. Now, this is a good segue to talk about my upcoming n8n automation session. So I do have, let me just quickly open that right now. If you have any questions, like I mentioned, you can drop them in the comment section below and I'll gladly respond to them for you. And also, if you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos like every other day. So if you are getting started with your AI automation journey and you sort of like need some form of inspiration, my YouTube channel typically talks about multiple things, not just AI automation. I try out a lot of new tools and from vibe coding to like building AI powered workflows. Just think about it, anything AI related. Like if this year you want to build real leverage with AI, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, so let me talk a bit about the n8n automation lab I'm hosting in February. So basically it's a 3-day event, 2 hours every day. It's supposed to be 6 hours in total, and the time is 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. ET. And basically by the end of the 3 days, you'd be able to walk out of the cohort with at least a version 1 of your own chosen automation that you want to build, right? So if you have any projects or anything in mind that you really want to automate, this is the time, right? So if you join me on the 25th, 27th, and 28th of February, then you'll be able to, I'm offering a 30% off. So 30% off the price of $899. So if you sign up today, you get 30% off. In addition to this as well, you get access to my 3-day you get access to my 3 to 4 hours AI automation in n8n course. I poured a lot of love into that course. So as part of like joining in the session, you get access to that course so that if you want to like self-study, you can self-study as well. In addition to getting access to the course and the 6 hours live session, you get access to support. I'm going to help you with like debugging any issues you have. You also get access to my paid school community for 3 months, because I know that, of course, if you're just like starting out with automation, maybe you need more than 6 hours, but then you have access to my paid school community. So then you meet other people who are also like keen and interested in like leveling up in the age of AI. I'm going to have more of these like sessions coming up. In February, we are focusing on AI automation inside n8n. Next month, we'll be doing n8n, vibe coding, Claude code, and all that. So this year, I really want to help as many people as possible build leverage with AI. So so you can basically, I'm going to pin this link in the comment section so that you can basically sign up if you're interested. I'm gonna put it on TikTok as well, and on YouTube I'm gonna pin it after this goes live so that you can sign up if you're interested. You don't need to know how to code. If you have to write code, I'll show you how you can generate the code as well. What you really need as part of this session is you just need a laptop. You need to have like your n8n account, come with an idea, come with like a project topic, and then we will start building together. Okay, so now that I've talked a bit about the n8n automation lab in February, mind you that if you sign up by today, you get 30% off, right? I don't know how long this promotion is or what other promotion is coming up, but if you sign up, you get 30% off. Okay, now let's come back to our automation here, right? Up until this point, we have been able to like generate an output email. So what we want to do is we want to send in this response back to whoever sent us the email, right? And there's a lot of formatting that can happen here, but I'm going to reserve the formatting for next week because I don't want to like overwhelm you, right? I don't want to overwhelm you with like new things and everything. So at this point, what we are going to do is we are just going to add in a Gmail node, because once the response is generated, we want to send the response to the person, right? So we are going to add in the Gmail node again, but this time around, we are going to do reply to a message, right? So I'm adding in reply to a message. Again, as long as you're using the Gmail node, you need to have your APIs connected, right? So I have my API connected for Gmail already. And so in terms of resource, is going to be message. In terms of operation, is going to be reply. In terms of message ID, I'm going to show you how you can get a message ID and everything. Again, if you are joining me on TikTok and you want to have like a more landscape view, you can basically join me on YouTube so that you get like a more landscape view. All right, so let's come back in here. I already did create my API keys for Gmail in the previous step. So I already have it here in the drop down. So if we come into message ID, what is the message ID? We can get a message ID from the Gmail trigger we sort of had in the beginning, right? You can see that there's an ID field here. So this is really the message ID. The message ID is like the ID of the email that came through. So we'll just drag this ID here. Okay, we'll just drag this ID here. And then in terms of message, it's basically like a plain text. Mind you that our response still has like all these things that we don't need. It has subjects and it has this, right? So what this means is that when we send in the response to whoever sends the message, is always going to have the subject and everything. Next week, I'm going to show you how you can sort of format it, right? So that it will just be this part that is getting sent. And next week, we are going to add in additional functionality to our email agent. We're going to make our email agent a lot more complex. We are going to be introducing human in the loop and everything. But today, the focus is to just be able to build like a simple email agent. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. Okay, so I'm going to drag this output here because this is a message we want to send to the person who sent us the email, right? So I'm going to drag this message here. And then in here, you can add in additional options, right? So if you want to like blind copy, you want to add in attachments, you want to say n8n sends this, you want to just respond to the sender only. Maybe sometimes an email is sent and it's sent like to multiple people. So you can really decide how you want this to go, okay? So I'm not going to add in any additional options. So now, I think we are close to the moment of truth, right? So let me just open my email here. I'm just going to bring this one here. Okay, so this is the email that came through, right? This is the email that my email agent, which we just built, sort of like picked up, right? This is the email that the email agent we've just built picked up. As you can see, it's talking about the Anthropic CEO here. Now, this is the response that has been generated for us from our email agent, right? Up until now, we haven't had any like response yet. But if I should click on execute step, right, it'll send the response, right? So if I come back into my email and I go to send, I should see the email sent. So let me come back into my email, right? Right? Now you can see that the response has been sent. So this is the response that was sent. Again, you see that it's giving us the title and everything. It sent the title and everything to the email. That's not what we want. We want ideally to have formatted it so that it's just this part that was sent. So this is the part we are going to be focusing on next week, because I don't want to introduce like too many concepts in this particular live video. I want to make it as simple as possible. Okay, so our email has been sent to us, has been sent on our behalf now. We didn't have to manually draft the email, everything was sent. So if you come in here, for instance, and you publish it, what would happen is that every single time an email is going to get sent, like anytime an email comes to your inbox, it's going to, like, the AI here will draft a response and send it over to whoever sends the email. But in real life, you don't really want that. In real life, you want to make sure that at least you are having the ability to approve those emails before they get sent. Because if you leave AI to do everything for you, sometimes they may end up doing things you don't want them to, or sometimes there are certain emails that you don't want to basically respond to, right? So what do? You introduce things like human in the loop. Next week, we're going to talk about human in the loop and how you can introduce it into this email agent so that it gets so that it's a lot more reliable, and so that you're sure that the responses that go through is basically going to be things you really want to send out, right? Now, we have our version 1 of our email agent that has been created. When I started, I talked about the fact that when you're building AI automation, you want to make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself. You don't start by touching on every use case, right? We only touch on the reply to sender use case, but you can also have like the agent sort of like prioritize an email before it's sent. So those are all the things you can basically improve on. But we have our version 1 of our email agent ready. But what we want to do, we want to clean this up, right? When you're building AI automation, there are certain best practices that you want to make sure that you're adhering to. So some of the best practices is like you want to give this a clear name, right? So right now you can see that it's called my workflow 49. That is not what you want, right? You want to call it something like AI email assistant, right? Or AI email response assistant, right? And this is our version 1, so that next time we come back, we know that, okay, this is what we built. Now in here we have something this is called like Gmail trigger. This is basically like the default name that came with the trigger. So you want to also give it a name. You also want to give it a name. So again, if you have like a clear name you want to give it, you can drop it in the comment section below as well, so that we can give it. Thank you, Priyanshu. If you want to give it like a clear name, you can basically give it. So in here, instead of Gmail trigger, we are going to call it something like what do you want to call it? Want to call it something like email received or something like that, right? Best practices, you want to call it like something like email received. And then in here we have Google Gemini chat model, right? So you want to also give it a good name. So we are going to call it something like instead of like Google Gemini chat model, you want to call it something like email response brain or something, something that if you come back to this automation, you'll be able to sort of like remember. And then in here you want to give it something, a name, something than the default AI agent, right? So instead of just calling it AI agent, maybe you call it AI, you can say email drafter or something like that, right? You can give it a name like this. And then here is reply to message. Maybe reply to message makes sense to you, but you can also give it like a specific name as well. So maybe we can call it respond to email received or something, right? Okay, so basically you've been able to sort of like name every node you have inside n8n for this particular workflow. Now the next thing you can do as well to make this a lot more friendly for you when you pick this app so that you don't forget, you can come in here and click on the plus, or what you can do is you can click on this, right? So you can add a sticky notes, right? You can add a sticky notes. If you've been writing code, like if you've been programming, there are things like comments that you can add. So just think of sticky notes as adding comments, right? So in here you can add a note. You can say things, oops, did I just delete this? You can say things like this node triggers the entire automation, right? So you can say things like that. This node triggers the entire automation. And then you can have another sticky note here talking about the fact that you can say that this node drafts the email response, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say this node drafts the email response. And you can color code it as well, right? So it doesn't have to be like the same brown. You can say, you can color code it so that it's red or something else, and you can say this node drafts the email response, right? And then again, you can have another sticky note here that explains what this node does, right? These are all like best practices, because I know this seems like a very simple automation, but in reality, like if you are building like a gargantuan automation, like a very complex automation, and you don't have sticky notes and everything in there, and you don't have like, you're not grouping nodes and everything, sometimes it can get very confusing, right? So even if you are building a very small automation, it still makes sense that you have all these best practices there, so that once you start building very complex flows, you don't get overwhelmed because they are so complex. So in here we are going to say this node sends the response, right? And that's it. Again, you can give it a different color. So this is done now. This is done now. I believe our time is almost up. But yeah, again, if you're on TikTok, you can join me on YouTube. If you want a more like landscape view, because I'm also going live on YouTube, so you can join me on YouTube. But I'm gonna look in the comment section to see if there are any questions that come through, because I think we are at a point where we can wrap up. But yeah, like I mentioned, next week Saturday I'll be going live again. And the point of going live next week Saturday would be to sort of like improve upon this automation. Right now, this is like very basic. It's just receiving emails and then sending responses. There are times where you don't want to respond to the email. There are times where you want to have like a 4-eye check. And so those times you want to make sure there's a human in the loop. So next week, we are going to improve upon this email agent we are building. We are going to make it a lot more complicated, okay? Someone asked about beginner friendly video. You can basically watch my last live. It was very beginner friendly. I didn't even touch automations. I talked about like the various nodes and everything inside n8n, so you can watch my previous live. You can also if you go on my channel, basically the video you'd see on the homepage here, it's also like a beginner friendly video. This one, right? Not this one. If you come in here and you search for like n8n for beginners, you'll be able to see like a beginner friendly video, this one, right? This is also like a very beginner friendly video. So if you're just getting started with like n8n AI automation in general, then this is like a beginner friendly video you can start with. And then once you get a grasp of what this what n8n is, you can start like looking at the other complex use cases I've created on my channel as well. If you are not part of my school community, you can also join my school community. I have a free school community and I have a paid community. So this is if you go into school and you search for this AI tool does that, you'll be able to join my school community as well. Infinity, if you have something in mind you want to do but you don't know where to start, how can you help such? Yes, so you can join my paid community. We meet once a month, and like you can ask as many questions as possible and I can guide you. You can also join my upcoming n8n automation lab. Like I mentioned, we are going to help you sort of like go from zero to like at least your version 1 automation that you want to build. So Infinity, there are so many ways in which I can help. Basically my YouTube channel, like videos are free. There's lots of use cases you can try out. You can join my school community as well, or you can join my paid school community as well. There are so many options. Inside my paid school community, you also get access to all my free courses. You get access to all my paid courses. So you can get that as well. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor, so I have a lot of like courses on LinkedIn Learning. If you have a LinkedIn Premium account, then you get those courses for free as well. So there are a lot of like free and paid resources that you can get access to. And all of them are very helpful, very valuable as well. So if you are getting started with your AI automation journey, building workflows and everything, like don't feel like you're alone. There's a lot of resources out there that I've created. Some are free, some are paid. This exact AI automation we built here, I have it step by step on my website. So if you come in here, if you go to my website, this AI tool does that.com, and then you go to free resources, you can basically type in your name, your email, and then you can download it. You can get a file, right? And it gives you like the step-by-step steps. Everything we did today, you get that step as well. You get that handout as well for you. So there's a lot of like free resources out there as well, right? But if you want something more like hands-on, you want me to help you out and everything, like that structured way of learning, then the two options are you join any of my live session, like my live paid sessions, or you can join my school community, the paid school community. But yeah, I don't see any more questions coming through on TikTok, or I don't see any more questions coming through on TikTok or on YouTube either. So I'm going to end this live. Today is Val's Day, so happy Val's Day, everyone. But yeah, thanks everyone again for joining. Like I mentioned, next week I'll be going live as well, so that we build on top of this AI automation we have in here. But yeah, as usual, thank you for joining, and hope to see you next week.